Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan here, and we're continuing our series of looking at the Eagles' NFC East rivals, figuring out where they are at this point in the offseason. What changes have they made, both in the coaching staff and scheme, personnel? What changes do they need to make to continue to be competitive or to try to knock the Eagles off the throne? Just a reminder, everyone, we did this last year. This is not to be confused with our summer outlook that we do with Greg Cosell every year, I think in June or July, where we preview the NFC East, because by then the rosters are pretty much final. I mean, right now, these teams are still in flux, and what Adam and I like to do is just look at where they're at, look at the moves they've made. And Adam, certainly of all the three foes that the Eagles will have to face, the Cowboys are the ones that have made the most changes. They have a new head coach. They have a new defensive coordinator. They have some new players. And they're just an interesting team because when healthy, when Dak Prescott's been healthy, he has given the Eagles fits. So the Cowboys are hoping Dak Prescott does come back healthy, and we'll see what happens with this team with its new direction. How do you feel just from the feedback you got about the changeover to Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach, but also with Matt Eberflus coming back to Dallas, where he learned under Monty Kiffin to be their defensive coordinator?
Yeah, so I would say that there was surprise around the National Football League that Schotty got the job. It's just a lot of people thought he'd just be a career, coordinator or position coach. They most likely quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Or an offensive coordinator or senior offensive assistant or passing game coordinator. No one really saw him as a head coach. But here's what I could tell you, Cowboy fans, and I know we get a decent amount of Cowboy fans. He coaches with a lot of discipline. He was brought in specifically when he was hired by the Seahawks to coach Russell Wilson hard. I mean, what hard coaching means you hold guys accountable. He does that. Everyone remembers his father, the late great Marty Schottenheimer. So he's a son of a coach. I get it. I know there's a bunch of retired Cowboy players that don't like this move. They thought it came out of nowhere. Schotty had been there under Mike McCarthy. He'll now we'll see what the scheme looks like and how he coaches Dak. But I will tell you this on Schottenheimer as we get into this. He's forward thinking. Yes. He believes in data and analytics. He believes in throwing early. He was the one who came up with let Russ cook, that thing in 2020. To give you an idea of how great Russell Wilson was, he had 28 passing touchdowns in 8 games until two things happened. Pete Carroll had enough. Their defense was not competitive. It wasn't competitive enough, depending on what your point of view was, because they were terrible defensively. And Pete said, no, we're going to run the football. And him and Schotty had philosophical differences, as I was told then. And then teams started trying to take away the deep ball because they were super aggressive. It really started in week 1 that year, I think, against Atlanta. And he didn't stop until Pete kind of put the kibosh on it. So I would say this is good for Dak Prescott as we move along here. I think this is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And they should come out aggressive. They've got a relatively young receiver core, which I think is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's their one veteran, really. Paris Campbell, still a long shot to make the football team. They signed him recently, but he's not the player he once was. I don't know what he's got left at this point, but Schotty's forward thinking. So, folks, they should be throwing a lot early in the first half. He's big on coming out early and throwing and not running as much.
Right. And one thing on his hire, Adam, which you said did not go over well with a lot of former Cowboys, even Cowboys fans. I would say this. If you are a Cowboys fan, you have to be grounded in a little bit of reality. And the reality is that your owner is Jerry Jones, and he's not going to hire, say, the way the Eagles hire. He's not going to look for some young kid who connects emotionally with his players. And that's just not what he does. He hires coaches who have chops, who have coached in other spots. You know, he's sort of the king of the retread, except Schottenheimer has never been a head coach, but he's been, as you mentioned, 15 years, I think, offensive coordinator with 4 different teams. I mean, he's been around the block. His dad is Marty Schottenheimer. So this is about as close to daring that Jerry Jones is going to get because Schottenheimer's never been a head coach before. But to your point, I think if you want to be encouraged as a Cowboys fan, you got this kind of guy who has chops, but he, as you said, he's also known for being a little bit more progressive minded, using data, we know that Mike McCarthy said that, but didn't really believe that, right? This guy believes it. And I think he will bring a different approach to how he runs the Cowboys offense. Now it's just on the team to deliver him some personnel. They have CeeDee Lamb. I think they got to get a little bit more dynamic, Adam. And there are two running backs that they added, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. Who knows? I mean, you and I and Greg Cosell talked about Javonte Williams in Denver and that great rookie year he had and all the expectations, but he had a severe injury and he just hasn't looked like that guy. And the same thing for Miles Sanders, did not look like that guy with the Eagles in Carolina. I do think the inside zone running that I would expect from them will help, but again, he still has to make the team, but they are not very dynamic outside of CeeDee Lamb.
No, and you wonder with Javonte Williams, I mean, it's not like he's old or anything, but he signed really, you could call it backup money. He signed for $3 million, 1 year and $3 million. Sean Payton didn't believe in him. He just never could really let him be the guy there in Denver. So he signs with Dallas, expected to be the lead back. Miles Sanders made a lot of money for a couple of years with the Panthers. It's kind of fascinating because you got sort of in a way two discarded running backs because Denver clearly didn't want Javonte Williams back. Miles Sanders was cut because he got benched last season. Chuba Hubbard took his job. Mm-hmm. And then Deuce Vaughn, who was a little guy, could be a change-up if he makes the team. But they're questions. Dallas has a lot of questions. You mentioned the receiver core. Jonathan Mingo, who they acquired last year, has been a classic underachiever who's very talented. It just hasn't happened for him. What I'm told with him is he looks really good in practice. He can't transfer whatever he does well in practice to games. That's a problem. Jalen Tolbert is on the final year's rookie deal, came on last year. So we'll see if he could continue that. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb. Jalen Brooks, who doesn't play a lot, number 83, could play. He's not a bad backup who they've tried to develop. Kevontae Turpin's been a nice story. There's not a lot of guys who've been there and done that other than CD. Right. Jake Ferguson's a really underrated tight end, and the one that shocked me, I got to tell you, when they took Luke Schoonmaker in the second round in the 23 draft, that floored me. I was shocked. I don't know anyone who saw him go in the second round, and he just has not gotten the ball. He's really what they call an athletic wide tight end, and this is not usually the guys you draft in the second round.
Right. And if they could unlock him, then you have him and Ferguson. Let's say Schoonmaker plays like a second round pick. That's a pretty good two tight end. You can get in your 12 personnel on first and second down, get the run game going, get Dak warmed up a little bit before you open up a little bit. But you can't really bank on that. Right now, if you told me the Cowboys drafted like Ashton Genty in the first round, give themselves a dynamic playmaker, and then took a speed receiver in the second round, then I can start to see, their offense being a little bit better right now than just being like, let's force feed CeeDee Lamb 12, 13 passes a game and hope to get something out of our running game, which was basically the recipe last year, and that didn't work, and then Dak got hurt. So you could convince me that the ceiling's a little higher if they bring in, like if they draft Genty or a really good running back, and then get themselves some speed at wide receiver. But one thing that remains, Adam, with this offensive line, that for the longest time, no matter what they had on personnel, Adam, you can always rely on the fact that they have a pretty good offensive line. Dallas has always drafted well on the offensive line, from Zach Barton to Tyron Smith. Beatis played well for them. They got some good years out of Terrence Steele, who they acquired at one point. So, but that's not the same anymore. And they've done a good job with Tyler Smith. But Tyler Guyton sort of is the guy that can make this thing go one way or the other, his development.
Yeah, he needs to be better. I know a lot of teams saw him as a right tackle, not left. But Terrence Steele is their right tackle, is highly paid. Cooper Beebe is back as their center. You mentioned Tyler Smith, and this is, again, you just don't know. Tyler Smith was drafted to be the replacement for Tyron Smith, and it wasn't working. It wasn't going to work at left tackle until they made a decision on Tyron. They threw him at left guard, and voila, he's been terrific. He was a small school player at Tulsa. Again, there was some concerns. He was too raw coming in, and really good coaching and great story of development. He's a good player, but they got to figure out right guard.
Mm-hmm.
That's and Tyler Guyton's got to play better. I mean, he's got to take the next step up here. So there's a challenge here. Connor, by the way, they have a first-year offensive line coach in Connor Riley. So they've got to get some things fixed here. This is another team that's got some very interesting offensive talent, but honestly, there are a lot of questions. And by the way, Riley was a long-time college coach, offensive line coach, like one of the better ones, but he has not coached in the National Football League. This is not the only coach on Schottenheimer's staff who's not coached in the pros before.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, and the more I look at it, Adam, this could be, if Tyler Guyton's not an improved player, this could be a below average offensive line. I mean, you're talking about Tyler Smith as a very good piece at left guard, but Cooper Beebe okay. Center, Brock Hoffman ended the year playing right guard. Terrence Steele, I don't think Terrence Steele, from the tape we've watched and talked with Greg, he just hasn't played very well. So I think he had that knee injury a couple of years ago.
ACL, he's been okay,
ACL.
but not as good as they'd like. Yeah,
right. But like he's a year older now, so if they don't really start to develop or get some new blood and some functional, better players on the offensive line, then you're really just looking at 1.5, kind of, blue chip players on your O-line. That's not what the Cowboys have been built on in the past. They've been built
Terrence
on
Steele,
three guys who are going to maul you.
Terrence Steele, when he's at his best, he's a top 12, top 10 right tackle.
Right.
But yeah, they need him to play at a really high level. He's a very interesting player because there were some questions. I remember when I think he was undrafted back in what year was he? I got to look up what year he was not drafted. I think it was 2020. Yeah, 2020. Mm-hmm. But he's been a good story, but he's not. He just needs to take it up a notch, as you said. Robert Jones comes over, by the way. He was not a bad backup. He could start some games. Coming over from the Dolphins. Yeah, we're going to close the offense out like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you started with DakPrescott staying healthy. He's got to. It starts with him. They have major questions at running back. There's just no way to know what these guys have left. Javonte Williams looks special as a rookie. It's been a regression since then. The contract tells you what he took 1 year, $3 million. That kind of tells you a lot where he's at. There's a lot of upside at the receiver group. You mentioned that the offensive line's got to be way better. They've got a guy who had not coached the NFL before, who's coaching the offensive line. And then they're changing their defense. So there are a lot of questions here.
If they don't get a more dynamic running back in the first 3 rounds of the draft, then I'm just going to have no faith in this Cowboys team, because I just cannot. They did this last year with the running backs. They cannot go into the year with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders thinking that that's going to be okay. That's how I see it. Maybe they see it differently, but we'll see.
Here's the problem: they only have 6 picks: a 1, a 2, a 3, a 5, 6, and a 7.
Oof.
They've got needs. They got to need a corner, edge rush, D tackle depth. Mozzie Smith has got to play better. He's got Diggy got his monster deal.
Yep.
They'll get Micah's deal done, but it's going up by the day. They're gonna have what else in New Jerry's waiting. They got a lot of needs. I mean, this is a team. There's a reason why they've kind of floundered. They're talented. They're not there yet. The roster's got to be better. Jerry doesn't get super involved in free agency anymore. Like heavily, we're talking about the big deals. He just doesn't do them anymore.
Right.
There's been this misnomer, but yeah, we'll get to defense in a second. But to finish offense off, I'm just curious how aggressive, because I know what Shotty did in Seattle. I'm curious. I would assume he'll do the same thing, because that was great coaching in Seattle in 2020.
Adam, we wanted to pause a second just to remind all of our great listeners, they have to reap the benefits of a free 30-minute stretch at Stretch Zone. And then when they do, they will automatically want to sign up for more. So you can get to Stretch Zone. You can go to your local Stretch Zone. We'll talk about where they are. You can go to stretchzone.com and easily sign up for your no obligation free 30-minute stretch, or you could just do it the old school way and give them a phone call.
That's right.
One of those 3 ways, and 12 locations, but they're also growing. Adam, tell them where you can find Stretch Zone.
All right. So they're going to have their 13th location in PA, New Jersey soon, when they open one up on up Route 309 in Warrington in mid-April. But you'll see me anywhere from Elkins Park, I go to, which is where I grew up. If I want to travel a little bit, I go to Exton. I go to Exton a lot. You'll see me in there see my man Austin, who's phenomenal. He gave me maybe the best stretch I ever had earlier this week. That's in the Whiteland Town Center, by the way, in Exton, PA. Devon, near the Whole Foods, on Route 30 on Lancaster Avenue. Haverford one's like 10, 12 minutes from there. Also, right near Suburban Square. South Philly, near Graduate Hospital on 25th and Washington Avenue. You'll see our man Dave Spadaro, who 4 years ago told me, Dave from the Eagles told me about Stretch Zone. It was a great tip he gave me.
Nice.
Montgomery County, Elkins Park Plaza, which I mentioned. Upper Dublin, Drescher Promenade at Upper Dublin off 611. Feasterville and Lower Southampton Village. So that one I've not been to. I probably eventually go there. We mentioned the one opening in Warrington. We'll find out exactly where that is. We'll get that information for you. New Jersey, where you go, in Cherry Hill and Evesham Road. Mount Laurel and Centerton Square, right? Really, like almost directly across from NFL Films. Franklin Lakes on Franklin Ave, Northfield and Tilton Road, and Princeton, Nassau Park Pavilion. Get your, as Geoff said, free 30-minute stretch. Feel better. Trust us. You and I know that.
You are quickly becoming like the Jose Oquendo of Stretch Zone customers. Maybe for a younger audience who likes baseball, the was it Ben Zobrist, where you might go to those guys played like every single position at one point in the majors. You may have to go to every single Stretch Zone location in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, just so like you can say, hey, and you got to go see this guy and my buddy here. That you'd be the man about the region.
And by the way, speaking of doing that, you now, because of their new announcement, they're calling system-wide access. So basically, if you're a member, right, and you've got some visits left, let's say you're traveling, before you'd have to pay to go to another Stretch Zone that was not part of their region. Now, if you're traveling to California, anywhere in the country, Denver, wherever it is, you just use one of your membership visits. It doesn't cost you any extra, and use your 30 minutes. Now, by the way, real quick, I usually do 30. Do you do 30 minutes? I don't do 60. I do
30. 30 is fine.
Yeah. I guess for people really struggling with something, I totally get that. But I do 30 minutes, and and hamstrings are the number one thing to do. If you're a racquetball player, pickleball, if you play racket sports, if you play softball, baseball,
if you run
like you, right? You want to get your upper body done. You get your traps done. This is your shoulder area. It's your traps here. If you're into racket sports, I would also, and I got my back stretched the first time in like 2 months. It was so good. I needed it. I had no idea. I just suggested it. I was like, I'm having my back done. Oh my God. Talking about getting opened up. It felt so good.
I bet. Folks, sign up at Stretch Zone. And when you do, tell them you heard it from Adam and Geoff. All right, let's go over to the defensive side. They welcome back Matt Eberflus, who, for those who don't know, his first major job, but second actual NFL job was with the Cowboys starting in 2011. He was, I think he joined Rob Ryan to be a part of Jason Garrett's staff. And then pretty soon it was Monty Kiffin running the show for the Dallas defense. And that's where a lot of his philosophy comes from. If you remember Jonathan Gannon, when he was the Eagles defensive coordinator, he came from Indianapolis under Matt Eberflus, and he talked a lot about the HITS principle, HITS, hustle, intensity, takeaway, smarts. That is a direct flow from working under Matt Eberflus, who worked under Monty Kiffin. So this will be an interesting dynamic for the Cowboys defense, because Matt Eberflus, say what you want, he was not a very good head coach in Chicago, but he was a good defensive coordinator in Indianapolis, and his teams were known for being good against the run and taking the ball away. And he was actually starting to build that on the defensive side in Chicago, but obviously the offense was a mess and it didn't work out. But his big challenge, Adam, will be to figure out a way to get his front to stop the run, which Dallas has not done a very good job of. And then I think they'll be better against the pass, because this guy is a linebackers expert, and then B, he plays a lot of zone. He likes the cover two on pass downs.
Oh, they're zone.
Yeah, they're going to be heavy zone. But in order to do that, you definitely have to be able to stop the run early. And to your point, Mozzie Smith has to be better teamed up with Odigizua, who are both kind of like three techniques. Odigizua can give you that burst, but they've got to be stronger up front against the run.
Yeah, I totally forgot that Monty Kiffin and Eberflus were together with the Cowboys, and Eberflus is a good defensive coach. He's just not a head coach.
Right.
not everyone could be a great head coach. It's the way it is. But and it's funny because when you look at their situation, they're going to be challenged. There's some holes there that Overshown, poor guy, just cannot stay healthy. He struggled just to stay on the field. He's talented, undersized linebacker, but he's very talented. And Kenneth Murray has been an enigma. He's been one of these guys who was highly touted, great college linebacker. It's never got it done. People can't understand what's the mystery. Why can't he be great? He's keen diagnosing has been the problem, as Greg Cosell told us. The Titans were done with him. They were trying to move him. They found someone to take his contract. They got nothing back for him, really, very little in return. But Cowboys like him. So there are just a lot of questions with this team, with guys who've had injuries, guys who've underachieved. There's a lot of talent here, but there are a lot of questions.
Yeah, Kenneth Murray is going to be a really interesting litmus test because, again, Matt Eberflus is sort of known for being a linebackers coach specifically, developing linebackers. Did a great job with Shaq Leonard, right, or Darius Leonard when he was in Indianapolis. Not surprisingly, they also signed Jack Sanborn, who Greg Cosell really liked his tape, a typical Wisconsin linebacker, can play downhill. If Overshown's just not ready or not the same, you could feel kind of confident Sanborn can go in and give you those run defensive snaps that you need. But Kenneth Murray, to me, is the big, the undersized guy. He's got the speed, he's got the athleticism, but he's never, I remember when he came out. You know who I know, a guy who's played defense and coached defense for quite a while in the NFL. One of my favorite guys to speak to. He did not like Kenneth Murray at all. He did not like his tape, and he specifically told me he was going to get bullied by offensive linemen in the NFL. He said, yes, we watch Oklahoma's tape. He can fly around and make tackles with his speed sideline to sideline, but when those guys are coming at you inside, he said Murray is not the guy you're going to want. So, Murray's a Cowboy now. He's going to have to go up against an Eagles team that loves to run inside with big offensive linemen and big running backs. So it'll be a big challenge here for Eberflus to figure out that linebacker situation, and again to get that defensive front playing well. Do you feel like their pass rush, if they can stop the run and better, is good enough? I mean, certainly with Parsons and Odigizua on the inside, that's a good start. But when you talk about a 4-man rush, do you like this 4-man rush?
It's got to be better. They need more. They need more pass rushers. Now, Sam Williams, he's pretty gifted. He's been hurt. There's something there with him. He's very talented. There were major off the field concerns with him when he was drafted. To be honest with you, I don't think there's any question he would have been a first-round pick. I mean, that's how talented he was. You see the flashes, but he needs to be more consistent. Marshawn Nealon is talented. He had a knee injury last year, but he's talented. He was drafted in the second round. Do they have enough guys? You could say they do, but they haven't got enough production from them. That's the problem.
Agreed.
So, and Dante Fowler's back for a second time with them.
I like that signing. A guy knows them, is pretty consistent from year to year on who he is. He's not going to dazzle you, but he can rush the passer.
Honestly, do they have enough players? Yeah, but I just don't trust the production of Williams. Peyton Turner's been hurt a lot, by the way, former first-round pick of the Saints. It's kind of funny. Like, if you look at this group, it was really tall and got long arms, but there's so much upside with this group. But it's just like, okay, Fowler, you mentioned, who's been around a long time, good player. Mike is elite. You like to know if one of those two guys got hurt, do they know what they're going to get out of Nealon, who was a rookie last season? No. Williams, no. Peyton Turner, who's just never done it. He's been hurt. So those are the questions.
Yeah, they made an interesting signing of Solomon Thomas, the former Niners first-round pick, who he can give you some nice burst from the inside in a situational role. He's always been able to do that. But again, their biggest issue is being more stout against the run. I mean, if they are, then he's a nice addition because then you can throw him in on your beeline pass rush and have him give you some good snaps. But they got to figure out a way to just be a stronger defense. I do think health is, like you mentioned, their biggest issue, whether it's not just Dak, right, or offensive linemen, but they've had, last year Micah Parsons was hurt. They've had Bland be hurt. They've had Trayvon Diggs be hurt quite a bit. If they can stay healthy, decent secondary, plus I think it's going to be helped by the coaching change, but not really deep. good starters. They get Kaiir Elam. I think they traded for him with Buffalo.
Yeah. He struggled. Oh,
Yeah. You hope
he got
maybe an
benched.
exchange of
Benched several times.
scenery, can do
Yep.
something for him.
Yep.
But they've got players, like you said. They've got players. They are certainly a talented team. I think health and then just those key areas where you need more production might be the areas they still have to address.
I mean, honestly, the upside of this edge rush group, if you could tell me Sam Williams will be consistent, stay on the field,
Nealand, yep.
stay healthy, Marshall Nealand, stay healthy. I have no idea what to expect from Peyton Turner. I mean, it's been unfortunate with all the injuries he's had. Because I know Cowboys fans will say, you know what, they don't need anybody. They just need to play better. Yeah, that's true. Depth is not so much about how many players you have. It's about production. Sometimes that's missed. So that's an issue. Linebacker, serious questions. And that corner, Trayvon Diggs with his injury history, he's on the final year of his extension, I believe. Let me just double check that one. I think he is. No, he's not. No, he's got a lot of years. Who was I thinking?
Yeah, they give him a deal.
No, no, I'm sorry. I was thinking Deron Bland. I'm sorry. Deron Bland's on the final year of his deal.
Yep.
Who's talented. We'll see about Elam. Kaiir Elam has been just didn't work. There was a pretty big reach for them.
Yeah.
So, and they're really good at safety with Hooker and Wilson. Malik Hooker's revived his career after all the injuries he had with the Colts. He's become a pretty good football player. Donovan Wilson's always been solid. So, this is another team that's got a lot of questions. See, with Philly comparatively in the NFC East, the Eagles lost a lot of players, but their core of the roster was so good. Whereas the core of the Dallas roster, there's some good players, then there's some are talented but have been underachievers, or there've been some injuries, whatever the case may be. They just haven't gotten there yet.
All right. And Damone Clark is a guy who has played well for them in the past as kind of this hybrid linebacker safety, but that was in the Dan Quinn system. It will be interesting to see if he has a role in the Matt Eberflus defense, which is going to look completely different than what Dan Quinn ran. And I don't even know what they were doing with Mike Zimmer, to be honest with you.
Yeah. We'd have to ask our old friend Paul Gunther, who was Zim's right-hand man, what was going on with their defense last season. So bottom line is Cowboys, there's always something going on, but they're always talented. They typically underachieve for whatever reason. You could point to a number of reasons, but they're always fun to watch.
All right, fun episode again. We got one more preview left. That is, of course, of the Washington Commanders, who I think will be the odds-on favorite to be the team that could possibly dethrone the Eagles. We're not saying they're the odds-on favorite to win, but if you're going to pick one team to say this will be the one that could really knock the Eagles off and be the next NFC East champion, it would be the Commanders. We'll cover that in our next episode. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.